Okay, so the topic of this discussion, what are the top 10 challenges? I think given the time now, perhaps if I could just ask the panel to just name their number one challenge, if we can go from Bruce. If you'd like
Okay.
to.
From me, the thing we've got to remember, not just with IT and estates, but even within IT, different parts of IT, is we're all on the same side. It's not a competition. We're not there to blame each other, so we are all on the same side. We're all working for the same organisation, for the same aims.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I'd focus, I think, to bring up something different on the user engagement side. I think what's interesting today is we've talked a lot about different ways of engaging users and bringing them through the process. I think that's obviously absolutely critical, and it's something that IT and estates have to work together on. I think what's interesting, we've talked a fair amount about kind of business change, design principles, standards, requirements, and what have you. The one thing that's been a bit light, perhaps, today I'm talking about is on the acceptance side, user acceptance side. It's how you actually physically hand over the responsibility for the spaces that you deliver, so that you can walk away from them to users, and actually achieving that. And part of that is testing and understanding success, what success looks like, and making sure that's documented and clear. But that's a fairly key process, and it's a very hard process to actually get to that stage where you can walk away.
Jeremy. Susan.
I think from our experience, it's actually having a project lead. You've got your project sponsor, and the project lead for us has been the person who has coordinated all the teams. So that became apparent after a few builds and refurbishments, but to have that one person, and I think you've pointed out, a designated role for that person then to coordinate with everybody and bring people together.
Thanks. Bernard.
Mine's knowing the scope of works. As we said earlier on, the project initiation document is paramount. Following the success of the XNet project, I was then nominated to be the project manager for a data centre upgrade of about £3 million. Unfortunately, I've been working on that project for 2 years. We haven't decided on the design for it yet. We've had 2 project initiation documents, which we thought were quite secure, but unfortunately we're meeting challenges all the time for HPC installation and a living systems installation, which is causing me heartache. So I've never worked on a project for 2 years, and we've got nowhere yet. So defining the PID is of paramount importance, and I think we probably defined the PID far too early in the whole process. We should have undertaken feasibility studies. We should have come up with options before we put pen to paper.
Thank you, Bernard. Antonio.
Well, at the moment, I believe it's an improvement of the process that we've got, and a better service for the projects from our side, but within engagement with the capital projects as well. We are lucky at this point that we have already good relationship going, that we've got standards in place, we've got processes in place, but there are particular aspects like the design and the delivery of the ICT installation within capital projects, which is still managed by M&E consultants, which gloss a bit over the ICT aspects of it. Of course, they are more tailored to look at the electrical installations or sometimes even the mechanical installation rather than the IT. There is still a little bit of a sense of ownership by the estates and capital projects of the delivery of the physical infrastructure of the ICT side of things. But I think even if maintained under the estates or even the main contractor, should be relinquished to a dedicated ICT consultant, and we would see a much better and much easier delivery of the infrastructure at the end of the project.
Good. Thank you very much, panel. If I can open it up to the floor now, just for general questions. We've got about 10 minutes before the end of the event. So happy to take questions. Anybody want to ask anything? Stunned silence.
The guys in front of me from Liverpool mentioned something that we're grappling with a lot at Leicester, which is that with the convergence of estates systems with the IP world, a lot of the suppliers really don't have even a basic understanding or expertise in working in a multi-LAN virtual server type environment. I'm just interested in whether any of you guys have got any views on that and how you've dealt with that.
Well, from my side, it has been definitely a fight. We run a very large network installation. We've got 29 sites, so it's very dispersed. We've got about, as I said, about 100,000 network points. And we are, in total, including our security team, 15, if not mistaken, currently. It would be impossible for us to manage a typical BMS old-style installation where we were told, give us an IP address and we will install this as we want. At the moment we say no. We are the ones who manage the network. We will give you an IP address, okay, but you need to give us the MAC address. Because we use the HCP, for example, and I'm sorry for the technical term, but it is a dynamic attribution of an address on the network, which makes our lives much simpler. And a lot of the old equipment wouldn't accept that. We are now forcing the manufacturers to do so, and telling the installers that actually it will benefit them as well, because they can use names rather than numbers and having to change that in the future, and we manage all of that for them. The other problem that we've got is the criticality of the installation and the downtime that may occur if we've got any problem with our switch. A switch can come down at any time. The good thing that we have to try and do is to reduce that downtime to a minimum. The quality of the installation and the quality of the comm rooms, the work environment, is the key difference between having a network down for half a day, 1 hour, or entire day because we can't handle the mess, the spaghetti incident that we've seen in the photographs, or the poor capability of installing the equipment or removing it, etc., to a new comms room where you can just take an old equipment out, put a new one in, and in a few minutes you have got already your equipment working again. In most cases, it is a risk that can be accepted in a BMS environment, or even in a CCTV environment if it's well configured, because there will be a buffer that can hold for a period of time the information. Not entirely sure if anyone wants to add anything.
Yeah, it's about conversations and trust and getting to know each other. We could all recount horror stories. The one I'm thinking of is when our estates departments had a contractor connect the car park barriers to the network, and they didn't put passwords on it. So from my office I could actually log into it and raise and lower the barriers. So we spoke to the contractor about this and said, why didn't you put passwords on it? Because you didn't tell us to put a password on it. But you didn't tell us that we might have to tell you to change the passwords. So it's about building up, and the person who had specified that was an electrician, he wasn't an IT specialist. So it's a case of building up these relationships. Our CCTV service is the biggest, it's my fault detection system for multicast, for the networking people here. It's the biggest user of multicast on our campus. So if I get a phone call saying there's probably CCTV, I know to look at multicast. And the relationships are built up now, that when new systems are being deployed, we're having these conversations with estates before the contracts are signed, but rather than after the box is screwed to the wall.
Barry Morton, University of Glasgow. Talking to Bruce earlier, Bruce and I are former colleagues. If really just to pose a point, we're talking about challenges, the emerging challenge, building information modelling. Estates colleagues will understand perhaps what that's about, maybe not. An element of Emperor's New Clothes, requirement for public sector projects to be delivered using these 3D models, which will be data rich, which will have hardware requirements, which will have staffing requirements, information requirements, and so on and so on. Posing that as a challenge and perhaps even a topic for a future conference, which could certainly be very topical for estates and IT to work together on.
I think you just volunteered to speak at the next one, Barry. but what you say is true.
If anyone's currently working on getting BIM strategies from the panel, if anyone's actively involved.
Yes. I was going to say we're about to kick off some work this year, and the building surveyor is using BIM, so it's going to be we'll report back in a year as to whether that helped. The previous refurbishment we did last summer was very two-dimensional, very flat. We hit lots of problems when we hit the three-dimensional world because of a lack of coordination. So the hope is modelling is going to help all of that. Modelling is going to get all those things in the virtual world before we hit them in the physical world. But we'll report back on that one.
We are currently running already a couple of BIM projects. See how we can improve and deliver. But at the same time, we are also going to existing buildings and reviewing the existing O&M manuals. And because you can imagine if you have a building for 20 years, the amount of refurbishments you're going to have on specific areas and the amount of documentation you're going to get is going to be absolutely crazy. So we're going to try and sanitize all of that information and put it all into BIM. We will start with a building at a time and see how we can transform that. Simultaneously, we've got two projects on the go. One is a change on CAFM systems, and another one which is on the operational excellence in terms of the space and use. And we hope that information that comes out from the BIM can then later on be used in other systems that can draw the good things on the BIM system and can be used for maintenance and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we are currently looking and actively pursuing that.
Just to quick comment here. Hi there. Just to come back around the BIM stuff. There's a project that we're working on, which is a 1 million square foot building. It's not in the centre. It's a commercial project. But one thing that's kind of interesting, and just going back to Jeremy's point about the model and the visualisation, that's been in place. But when we've been doing the coordination, there's been bits that have missed. So like anything, the quality of your data in dictates what you can do with it. So there's been, and for those of you who work in the BIM space, you'll appreciate that there are architectural models, there are mechanical models, there are structural models that all have to kind of come together to give you that consolidated look. But all of them have got to have good quality information. And from an IT aspect, we can be sitting across elements of the kind of electrical, the mechanical model, and some of the architectural as well, and particularly when we're looking at AV finishes and so on. So we're really dependent upon the information that goes in from others. And just to go back to Antonio's point about using that BIM model for ongoing services, again, that's a really interesting challenge in terms of how much information do you want to put into that model to make it an asset management platform or not. And again, there's a client that we've been working with where on the real estate side they absolutely want to do it, but on the IT side of things, no, because that's their space and their environment changes too frequently for them to want to put things in. In some respects, that kind of goes against the message from today, but I don't think it's a one size fits all right now.
That's a fair point. Just conscious of the time, so I'd like to thank our panel for contributing. It's short but sweet, and I think punchy. And again, I'd just like to thank all the speakers today for